The Raven project, developed by Cryo Interactive, was released for Windows PC MS-DOS in 1995 and was later ported to the PlayStation in early 1997. That sees humanity in the distant future being enslaved by an alien race and is on the verge of extinction. So it is your job to play as a pilot who joins a human rebellion with the aim to push back the invasion. The game is often referred to and even compared to Star Wars Rebel Assault that was released by LucasArts on the PlayStation. That sees you taking on the role of different types of machines, spaceships, ground, combat machines or robots, where you have to complete a variety of different missions and objectives in order to complete the entirety of the story. Between each mission you are also met with in-game FMV sequences with real-life actors that try to tell and progress through the overall story. And while the game does have some very unique ideas for its time, it didn't receive the best of reception with regards to magazines, and many of the gripes were around the FMV sequences, but even the overall gameplay, to a point that in some cases the Raven project is often considered as one of the worst games to be released on the PlayStation. As yes, many of us know that games that were released by Cryo had their gripes and they were often questionable, to a point that you would be wondering how they were even released on the console or on any platform at all, as they always felt very low quality or unfinished in many cases. Yes, they always definitely presented some very unique ideas, but just in the hands of other developers things might have been different. But it's not to say that the Raven project is overly a bad game, but I will admit there are definitely gripes within it from having spent time playing it, and mainly due to the missions and the objectives. Like when you start off on the first level, you will play as a ship where you're interacting and flying around the environments trying to shoot all of the enemies to complete the objectives. And while that can be a little bit on the cumbersome side if you're not used to this style of game, you will get the hang of it fairly quickly, as you do have navigation elements that tell you where the enemies are and how close they are to you, so that you can take them out. Where the main issue usually lies is on some of the other missions where you have to use the ground mobility robots, as they are quite slow and sluggish compared to the air machines or the ships. You can move around in the machine, in fairness, quick enough, but it's very slow compared to the ships that are flying around the area. And this is where the problem is, because essentially you're like a sitting duck, because no matter how many enemies you try to take out, because there's so many of them flying around and they're all targeting you, you'll be destroyed in a matter of only a couple of seconds. Because even if you do manage to take out one or two enemies, no sooner have you taken them out, someone else will pop up, and the thing is you can't even see them. Even though they're on your radar, you can't really see them or move around quick enough to be able to pinpoint their exact location, and before you know it you're gone and you have to restart the entirety of the mission again. And this is where the problem lies mainly with the game, is that you'll find yourself restarting the entire mission over and over again, more so on those ground missions more than anything else. Now from having spent time playing it, like overall that is like the major issue that I found with it. I genuinely don't think it's the worst of this style of game that I've ever played, but yes, there are elements of it that could have been better executed, because even when you look at the difficulty, yes, there's different difficulty modes that are available in the game, but there's no real contrast between choosing easy mode over hard mode, because it makes no relevance, because there's no real balance in terms of the overall difficulty of the game, especially with those missions as I mentioned. They're still as difficult as ever, and like I said, you'll be destroyed in an instant, so it makes no odds. The only thing you can do is just be mindful of your surroundings, and just with a bit of luck that hopefully you might get through some of these missions. So I can understand a lot of frustrations that gamers would have had back in the day with this game. Now I know there are those out there that have played it and they've managed to finish it for what it does represent, but it may not appeal to everybody, but it will appeal to people that do enjoy this type of genre of game. But would I consider it to be one of the worst games I've seen or played on the PlayStation? Not really, but it's definitely not up there with the best. It's kind of, I wouldn't say mid-level, but it's definitely borderline to some degree. It's just the unevenness of the balance of the gameplay is what the real main issue you have to contend with. But unfortunately it is what it is. Like back then these games were very experimental. They were never meant to be masterpieces. They were just unique concepts that at the time seemed like they were doing the right thing, but obviously they just weren't executed as well as they could have been. But there could have been many reasons behind that, and we'll never know that or ever understand that really. It just comes from a time that was just very different with games, because again we were in that transition period of early 3D games, so not everything was going to be perfect. And I think in many ways a lot of reviewers and gamers in particular had set their expectations quite high, not really knowing the end results. But still, it's interesting to go back to explore these games, regardless of whether they ended up being okay, good, good or not so good, as they all have something different and unique to share. They all provide a different experience that you really won't get anywhere else. And I know many people would give out about even the likes of the live action sequences, but that was a common theme, and if anything, I think that was a really cool idea to put into games. It was very reflective of its time, and those type of concepts did actually suit the vibes the game were going for, especially more with these futuristic style games. They definitely did well in that respect, even though the acting wasn't great, but they did manage to capture the atmosphere to some degree. If anything good comes from it, that's the one thing that you can definitely talk about. But it is what it is, not for everybody, but it will appeal to a select few, but it will frustrate others as well, so just be mindful of that. But regardless, I would love to know your thoughts of the Raven project if you have played it yourself, and what did you think of it back in the day, or do you enjoy these type of futuristic style games that were released on the PlayStation? So be sure to share it down in the comments below, and if you have enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell to be updated of future content. And if you would like to see more videos around other obscure games like this that were also released on the system, then you can check out the playlist on screen to see more of those games in action. And as always, keep those gaming memories alive.